product like Grok maybe or ChatGPT and switch on a reasoning model or reasoning mode, like
Okay,
using
I see.
thinking or something like that. This provides a bit more of creativity out there. It depends on the task, but sometimes, let's say Grok has this deep search or deeper search even mode, which is not thinking, because like for some things you just need to collect the information from the internet. It will collect like and analyze a bunch of links and web pages and give you some unstructured text, basically like a description of how to approach certain task. And then I would copy this into a markdown file, and because it will not be really a markdown structured file, I can then ask the AI assistant to rewrite this file for me in markdown. And from there, I can start generating the development plan, the phases, the task list, and then iterate on the problem. So essentially, I will come up with 100 different little prompts that are sequential, and then implement my application, my idea.
Okay, I like this. There are like various reasons why I don't want to use Grok. And I already have like a rough idea of what I need and what I want. So I think
Yeah,
Code
yeah, it
3.7
it
might be
would work.
sufficient for this.
Exactly. So it would work if you have requirements, and you can actually ask Junie itself, like, how would you go about implementing? Hey, Junie, let's talk. And ask
Hey,
it
Junie,
maybe not maybe not in the code mode, but in ask mode, just
I
to
also
see
have
what
you
it
played
can
with
do.
that? I have not.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
okay. So hey Junie, I want to automate some of my workflows for my weekly web newsletter. So there are not a
I
whole lot
would
of information
I
around
would
ask
I would
mode.
mention, yeah, I would mention then the requirements.md where to look for the requirements or for the ideas. Technically, we can attach this requirements.md file from using that plus button on the left, but if you just mention the file, Junior will be smart enough to locate it.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. So do
Yeah.
you, from my understanding, you would use Junie to generate the requirements markdown file, or you describe stuff in markdown and iterate with Junie? Like,
Like step zero, I would be collecting like the information from
gotcha.
the other sources, collect them into requirements.md, and that will be the first input to Junie.
Okay. So one thing that I need is basically to crawl or have a webhook that accepts a URL. That URL gets crawled and saved as a text document, including images and other, not including images.
There is a question in
That's
the chat,
great.
if we can see his usage quota percentage before and after. Unfortunately, no, it's not exposed in the UI. I would love to see it as well. That's a
Agree.
great question. Sorry, we are not exposing this information yet in the UI. That was a hiccup on like technical side, but it's coming. It's coming, folks. It's gonna be there. Like, no
I'm
worries.
also not. I'm also not sure if we are going to, because we have the JetBrains Enterprise account. I'm not sure if the enterprise accounts are going to have that because those are centrally managed. But for AI Pro and Ultimate, we definitely should have that.
Yeah.
Um,
It
yeah,
does exist in your ID, the overplay. Like, it depends on your account. Okay, I cannot see mine quota
yeah,
because
same.
I'm linked to JetBrains account, and I'm only seeing the screenshots you guys are posting. But honestly, this information that you have on the screenshots is like rather poor. It's not really as detailed as I would like it to see. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. So we want to see it more detailed. It's gonna be
Yeah,
there.
I would also like at least like a rough estimate before you actually execute a query or like a prompt where it's like this is likely going to consume 10% of your quota or something. And I
Exactly.
doubt this can be accurately calculated. I'm not an expert in that area, but at least like that you have like a ballpark number could be helpful for people to gauge, okay, is this really worth that much quota?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for this, the idea would basically that I in Raindrop can configure that URL every time I add a link in my. It's basically like a bookmarking app, right? Every time I link an app, I add a link. That's webhook get called, and with something like Puppeteer or something, um, here, that website gets crawled and saved in a text document. And this text document is already converting images to base 64 because that's how Claude works when you attach a PDF.
Mm-hmm.
So this way I can later on then take all the text documents in a certain folder, and I would preferably save this text document in Google Drive folder for that week.
Mm-hmm.
Also add metadata text document with link to the blog with the original URL. That's what I wanted.
Are you storing this data anywhere, like, or you're just writing to the
Just
files?
I just need files in Google Drive for now.
Mm-hmm.
That would be
Mm-hmm.
more than sufficient. So that would be step one, basically. So this would be like during the week, I gather blog posts and they get dumped there. Step two would be um, every Tuesday afternoon, because Cloudflare also has like a cron job application or cron job functionality. So every Tuesday afternoon, I would want to use Open Router, I think it's called, right? Um,
Yeah.
so basically like a platform for many LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's be real, like right now I use Claude. In 3 months I probably don't use Claude anymore because something's better out there. Every Tuesday I want to use Open Router to generate the newsletter, attaching the newsletter. I want to define a system prompt for the tone and reference newsletter episodes. Also attach all collected
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
blog posts of that week. That would be kind of would be the first step, what I would want to see.
Okay. So the way you describe the requirements, I would probably take a step back and
Mhm.
come up with something a little bit more descriptive for the title, like requirements for the kind of application, so what the application needs to do. Because it feels like already a technical plan that you have sketched out.
Mm. Yeah, I thought
It
about that
doesn't it
just a
doesn't
little bit.
it doesn't guide the LLM
That is true.
to the solution or to the
Mhm.
main. So maybe in the beginning, before the list that you have written out, you need some kind of a description of like a general thing, what the application is going to do.
Mhm.
This will
Gotcha.
guide the LLM for that direction where those tasks are applicable, and then maybe we will get a better development plan out of that.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm working on weekly newsletter that collects blog posts over the course of the week and summarize those and summarize those subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Newsletter gets sent out every Wednesday morning. And as things are right up now, there are a lot of tedious steps that I would like to automate.
Jan-Niklas is very good at typing. I'm not so good. Like, if you would see me typing so much, it would take like 10 minutes.
I'm very surprised by myself. Usually I make like a shit ton of mistakes.
Okay, let's run this and see. Like, ask mode is basically like a save mode, so it's not
Okay.
gonna start. It's not gonna start the development. It's gonna take like 3 minutes, and it will generate another file in Scratch's folder, so
Okay.
that it will not go and run the tests. But when you switch to the code mode on the follow-up buttons, it will actually take this generated file into account.
Okay. Okay.
Cool stuff.
So ask mode is more like for us as developer to have a conversation with the LLM used within Junie, or how can I think about it?
I like basically it's because Junie was very eager on start
Right.
writing the code, like when
Get it
we
done.
released it at first, and then you sometimes need to figure out like what are the requirements, what parts of the plan you want to kind of throw away and so on. Basically, it's the phase where you collect something into
Okay.
the context, so that
Is it
you get a better quality output for the code generation if you have something in the context that you have kind of
right?
collected. Right. And actually, you can switch to that mode in the middle as well when you have generated the code. And now you switch into the ask mode and ask Junie to reason about
Mhm.
the code. I don't know. We don't really have. I don't know. Like Claude 3.7 has the thinking or reasoning mode, right? Not the
Mhm.
separate model, but a separate
Right.
mode. Maybe need to ask the engineers if they are switching to that mode for asking. But it would make sense. I think. I just cannot confirm right now. In any case, it's pretty logical that you get to some point in your code generation, and then you want to discuss something with the code base without generating it. Then you can switch into the ask mode. So what do we have there? It was pretty quick.
Yeah, we have decent looking code from what I can gather. So, um, what we have here is an endpoint, basically on slash it.
Mhm.
Well, that's just the application name on slash API submit URL. We take a URL and an author. The author I don't really want as an argument, but I would like it to be crawled from the post. But that's okay for now. So it crawls a website, and that basically uses Puppeteer, which is like a headless browser engine. So it starts a Chrome instance without like showing the window. Takes the text out of the either main tag or just the body, and has just a basic text. It converts the images to base64. I'm not quite sure if they're at the right spot then. Let's see. Where are we? So those are just methods we define. No, we separate them right now. That's probably fine.
There is a question if it's possible to disable comments in code, in the generated code, to save some tokens. That's a great question. Maybe we can enforce that with Junie guidelines, so that just tell it like generate code without comments could be one option. I need to experiment. I haven't tried that.
Is it just guidelines or guidelines.md?
It's guidelines.md and .junie folder. Yeah. Never generate comments. Yeah, let's see how it turns out. What else?
Okay, yeah, so that's one thing that I would like to change because right now we lose the order. So it would be like you have all the text content and all the images. I would like the images as base64 in the text spot, basically.
Right.
But that's okay.
So
It even
we
okay. It went way
we
further
can
than I
we can
expected.
we can clarify our expectations, like in the follow-up prompt, with
Yep.
switching to the code
Okay.
mode, and then you can tell it what to do. So maybe it will work. It's still probabilistic. There is
Yep.
nothing
So
predefined.
I want base 64 to remain in the same spot it used to be in the original website. Not necessarily a great discussion or like prompt, but let's see.
Let's see. Sometimes it understands broken English, so I'm really
Yeah,
impressed.
it even picked already like the Google API. Really nice. I like this.
Because we didn't specify that it should be a Google API,
I
right?
I said save it in Google Drive, but
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't check what how if there are existing JavaScript libraries for that, how that would look. Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to configure Junie per user, not per project, like idea Vim is, for example? So you mean like having rules globally? I
I
I don't
don't
know.
think
I
so.
haven't tried, but maybe it's possible with a symbolic link. So you
True.
just
Yeah, that
store the file somewhere in your user folder and just point it at the file.
yeah that would well, but we also don't merge guidelines yet, right? If I remember, so you if you would want like a global one, but then also project specific ones, I don't think we support that really yet.
Technically, Junie .junie/guidelines.md is basically a convention.
Mhm.
When you don't have that, and let's say you have a documents folder where you have those guidelines or rules how to implement something, you can actually guide Junie with a prompt and tell it, "Hey, my guidelines are there." So,
But that was one of the thing I think Cursor does it where you have like like basically like a .juni folder and you put markdown files in and they take just all. This way you would
mhm,
allow for some merging where you can have say like global guideline files
mhm.
and project local ones. And I think a lot of Cursor users do it also where they like differentiate tech stacks where you have like TypeScript guidelines,
Yeah.
React, and those kind of things. I don't like the granularity really, but I think the differentiation between global and project local would be nice.
Well, like it detected pnpm install command. What is it
Yes,
pnpm?
it's well, I use PNPM because
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm that fancy, you know.
I see.
Um, yeah, I'll run it real
Last
quick.
time we were building something on the stream, I learned that there is not only npm but also something like npx.
There's so much. Yeah, don't get me started. As long as you're not using yarn, you're good. That's a little snarky, but okay. Let's look at the code a little bit. So it did add Puppeteer, Google APIs, and Node batch. That all makes sense. The blank line. Okay, whatever. Uh,
One thing I changed in my setup when I started using Junie is this diff window. I switched into the, how you call it, like not side by side, but a unified viewer, because otherwise it just doesn't fit, and I still want to keep the Junie window open. Like
yeah,
folks in the chat, folks, you can tell us what is your preference.
I Personally, my monitor is like ridiculously massive, so I usually prefer the side-by-side window. But for the stream, I will use the unified view. That makes it a lot easier for people to follow.
Exactly.
It even has the cron job here. I have no idea how that cron job. It did still generate code comments though. Did I have the guidelines first or after I started that? I think I
you
did that
added
at the same
after,
time.
but
Okay. Yeah.
it's
Okay.
interesting actually. Something for our engineers to check, like can we enforce some of the code generation like in the middle of the workflow, like this one? It's not so many comments, but still, like you expected them not to appear, right?
Can you read cron expressions? I can't. I just totally believe that that's every Tuesday at 2 p.m.
We have AI assistant for that,
That's
ask it.
true. That's true.
Okay.
2
2
p.m.
p.m.
Okay. Every day of the
every
month.
day.
Jesus, yeah, that's good.
Nice. Cron Guru website. In fact, we have some, depending on where the string is used in our products, it can detect that it's a cron expression and just alt enter and it will explain what it is. And you can even sometimes test them. I'm not sure if it's doable with cron expressions, but definitely with regular expressions.
This is already a reason why I hate time zones. It's already annoying me, and daylight savings time. That is one thing that's going to bite me in the ass once it's like time zone or like daylight savings time, and I'm like, why didn't that run yet? It runs in an hour. Okay. Let's go back to the what is happening. So that looks pretty good. I like this. I think we also need, because it's Wednesday to Wednesday, basically, that I look at a week, we would probably also readjust that, I would assume. Ooh. And even drafted a system from. That's nice.
Catchy
Like
title,
title.
a brief introduction. Nice. A thumbnail would be also good.
That is the next step that I want, because I use a platform to schedule tweets and stuff for that. So that I use GPT-4o, for instance, to generate a thumbnail, put that in Canva so that I can still edit it, but also already attach it to the newsletter. And then draft tweets and posts for social media, schedule those, but schedule them so that I could still edit them. Because I don't just want to put out completely AI-generated content.
Mm-hmm.
That is pretty nice, though. I have no idea if that is right. I would need to look that up. Okay, so it would. Okay, let me see this for a second. It gets the system prompt and the user prompt. The system. Okay, so for the user prompt, it goes through all the blog posts by you by. Okay, and then that is nice. That should work. I would probably put like a little bit better delimiter in there, just in 2 blank lines, but that is works pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I think
When
also
when
I
I when
don't.
I yeah when I generate the text these days, I usually have an extra command or guideline to make the text should be in calm tone and make it appealing
Exactly.
to the
Yeah.
engineers
Yeah.
without marketing bullshit there.
Yeah. I have something like that in my pre-drafted prompt. But the other thing I think now, instead of just a plain text file, I think I want a markdown file because then you also have like the headlines structure bright.
Yeah.
I think that would be nice. And this way you could also put in the like the 3 dashes or something as the markdown for like a new page. So this way you could differentiate between posts. That's pretty sweet. Okay. Takes the file ID. Looks really, really good. Okay, let me AI assistant this because I doubt that this works the way I want it to. So I'll just this is in the newsletter file. I would like one thing that I would like is being able from here to jump to the actual file directly. Thank you. I knew that. What is the keyboard shortcut? Command or Apple down. Oh, sweet. Okay. So AI assistant.
It worked.
Plain code.
AI assisted verification.
Yeah. Well, someone needs to make sure that this code works. Yeah.
Is there an action for TypeScript with AI assistant to generate the tests for this one?
Yeah. I actually should have put that in my Junie guidelines. Always generate and verify with proper b-test tests. Okay, so this doesn't work quite the way I want it to. Let's do this. Get weak folder name method doesn't properly consider. Well, it's probably also where we save the file that is not right. Whatever.
The weak folder name is going to be the what is that like? Is it like sequential number of the week or?
Yes, but the problem is because the week is Monday to Sunday, or depending on how you look at it, Sunday to Monday, Sunday to Saturday. But in this case, the week is Wednesday to Wednesday. So what would happen is that like till Sunday, all the posts would end up in, I don't know, let's say we're in week 20 right now. Seems a little high, but assume we're in week 20 right now. If I add another post on Monday, this would be on week 21. So I want the time frame. Newsletter episode. Episodes was published on Wednesday. Again, not a great description, but Junie will figure it out.
Let's hope. Okay. Folks on the stream, tell us again, like there were some mentions about the Golang. So we currently support 4 IDEs: the IntelliJ, WebStorm, PyCharm, and Golang. Which camp are you representing? Like how many of you are TypeScript developers, PyCharm users, Java users, and so on? Nice.
IntelliJ is a little bit ambiguous because you could do all of those in IntelliJ. And I've even seen people do like already use Rust or something with Junie, even though it's not intended.
Yeah. Even actually, TypeScript is also not intended with IntelliJ with Junie. Like there is a distinction. Like Junie in WebStorm would run the proper tools, and it might not run the proper tools inside IntelliJ yet.
Same for Python and IntelliJ.
Exactly.
It's somewhat language specific right now, and there even a subtle more difference because in I know for Kotlin and Python we run semantic checks. That's why you have to configure the SDK. That's still a thing that we have to sort out with WebStorm.
Exactly.
Because
So it's all about tools integration. Like technically, I can generate C++ code in PyCharm. I have done that. Like I've been experimenting if I can generate Python code that binds to C++, and PyCharm was doing great there. But the tools integration is important and verification of the generated code, and therefore we kind of target the specific IDs with the language support, and that is why PHP Storm is not yet there, and some others are not yet there. But we're gonna deliver that. No worries. The team is already working on that.
So I recently stumbled over the question if we're going to support ReSharper for Junie. Have you heard anything about that? Do you know?
I guess maybe not
I
ReSharper, but Rider.
Writer is definitely on the to-do list, but we also have AI Assistant in ReSharper since recently,
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't heard from the team if ReSharper is on the table.
Okay, so it now looks from Sunday to Saturday. It did generate a bunch of comments considering the fact that I said no comments, but let's see. Okay, we do the adjustment. Okay, let's AI Assistant verify this again. Actually, that wrote test. Let's check the test first because that might be easier.
There's some red code there. Why
That's a
is
feature.
that? What happened there?
Extends real date. Oh my.
Mm.
Don't care about that for now. And that is a configuration issue. I think I have vtest installed, right? Maybe. I have not.
Could you do one thing before you execute the next prompt? In the
Yes.
guidelines where you have this, oh, there's a interesting balloon effects I had in the video right now. So, like you said, never generate comments. Before that, write in big capital letters, important, and then do not generate tests, like in big caps. Yeah, like this. Let's see if it enforces it somehow.
Let me check the test real quick. So it should go by Wednesday. Saturday of Wednesday, May 1st. Jesus Christ. Uh, so action. Explain code.
Mhm.
This week
Ido is
number
saying that
192.
LLMs struggle with negation, but the problem here is that there is no other way to express this. If we say generate clean code or code without comments, it's already like negation. So we can try different phrases maybe to enforce that,
But that is exactly what we wanted, even though I described it terrible, that basically the Monday and Tuesday of the following week are considered part of the previous week. So I assume that sounds good. I trust AI Assistant, that sounds good. So the other thing that I wanted, where were we about the method? I wanted this in Markdown, not in a text file. So where we say, probably in cron, I would assume. We're missing HTML DOM in the TS config. I would assume that query select is part of that, but we'll figure that out.
Did it reload the config or?
It should work, and it did work for resolving HTML element. Query submit does not exist on type. Document is not content. Is that a document that we define? Oh, apparently. I need more space. No, that's not our document. Yeah, because this should be. Weird where that's coming from.
Hallucinations.
Okay. So here we fetch the images. Where do we fetch the text? Of course, from string. Okay.
What are the resources you're going to? How does this automation get the input? Like, is it a list of links that you're gonna?
The idea for that's a great question. So I have the index point, right? And here we take, as an argument, we get the URL and the author. I do want to refactor this to just take the URL. But so what I'll basically do is if I'm in app.raindrop. So in here, you can somewhere configure integration, I think a webhook. So
Are you sharing something? They currently only see the ID.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe you're sharing only the window, not the entire screen.
Yeah.
Could it be the case?
Let me see. That is very much the case. My bad. Okay, let's try this again. So in Raindrop, I think you can basically configure webhooks somewhere.
Raindrop. Look it up. Maybe I would start my own newsletter as well.
Raindrop is really nice because it has a browser extension and a phone extension, or like phone app. So if I'm like at the blog post, right, I'm at this blog post here. I just hit this Chrome extension, say where to save this, and it even works for like YouTube links and stuff like that. So it's a nice bookmarking app. That's really it. But they do have a webhook. I would just need to figure that out. But basically, what I would want to do is every time when I add a new link to this particular collection, trigger the URL that I configure, and there I would say that the link gets passed as an argument. Mm-hmm. That is the idea. That's so I had before that I used make.com, which is like kind of like Zapier. What is my login? Give me a second. And they call it app integrations. Do I have? I have way too many Google accounts. Maybe this one. Looks fairly good. Yeah, so this is not a different automation that I use for a different thing, but basically what you can do.
Take.com, all right.
Yes.
Nice thingy. Let's
so
see.
They have Raindrop, and here you can watch bookmarks, basically. So that's kind of what I want. Is every time when instead here it's like calling like manual steps that you configure. every time when a new bookmark is added to that particular collection, I want it to get triggered. I could also the same way do like a cron job and like every day check raindrop, because they do have a REST API that I could fetch. So right now I hope that they have a webhook, so that because it's a serverless function, this way I save some money. Yeah, actually, I would probably save some money. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm too lazy right now to look through their documentation. But the thing that I want,
Junie should be able to figure it out without documentation. So that's our expectation.
That is another good point. But the thing that I want to do right now is where we have in the crawler here, because right now we parse this from a string. I want the HTML to be parsed as a markdown document. So actually, I can probably do a new prompt. Okay. On the page, instead of plain text document, set the format to markdown. So, has your way of programming changed since you are playing around with Junie?
I mean, the approach for generating this kind of applications. Yeah, at first, I only started with prompts and I didn't have any guidelines. Then I figured that sometimes LLMs generate code that I'm not really fond of. Like specifically with Kotlin, sometimes it generates Java-like code or mutable code. I wanted to be more functional. Then I started applying the guidelines, and at first I was also adding the tasks, what should be done in the guidelines as well. But then I figured that guidelines are for describing how something should be done, the style or the process, like marking the tasks as done upon completion. That's a process, right? So it shouldn't describe what the application is doing and specifically what has been done already. So what has been done already, it's part of README. Then my approach changed in a way that basically the way I work today, I have 3 prompts that are generic ones applicable to any project, and everything starts with the requirements. So requirements is the document that changes in the beginning, and everything is described as an idea there. And all the other prompts are for refining this development plan, coming up with the tasks, and so on. And I found that it's not changing. I have those prompts just always. I can copy paste them from my notes, and I'm never changing them. What else has changed? I have a list of ideas now, what projects I want to do. Like before that, I never had that. I was very lazy always to do something after work and like after hours. And now I have a bunch of things to try. And I wouldn't even hesitate today to open some open source project, figure out like, oh, there is an issue that hasn't been closed for 10 years. Maybe I can help out somehow. This is what I want to try.
That's kind of what we talked earlier about the Python bot for the JetBrains community Discord that I've worked with. I have no idea about Python. But like also I can't, just because we want some changes, I cannot ask the other admin and be like, can you do this just because it's Python? So Junie was a huge help. It took a couple iterations because I like had no idea, and I do think that working with indentation instead of brackets is stupid for a programming language. I don't know who came up with that.
The other thing is that I actually learned about implementing some stuff that I didn't know how to implement. Maybe it's not the best solution, but then I was looking at the code that was generated and I was like, aha, this could be done this way. Why didn't I think about it earlier? So
yeah,
and applying some very straightforward logic, by the way. Like I did a pose detection last time, and how do you detect a movement, a sports movement,
Mm-hmm.
to count as a rep, right? And there is like stages in your movement that your body needs to pass,
Mm-hmm.
and those need to be detected. And it's an FSM, finite state machine. You need to pass
Yeah.
all the states, and then it's a count. I didn't even think about that like in the beginning. In the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a similar learning because I'm working in a WebStorm code base right now a little bit as like a 20% project. And I mean, you know that I have no idea about Kotlin, so I'm definitely not writing good Kotlin. Kotlin is surprisingly approachable, so I can generate some code with basic Java knowledge, but it's not how you would write Kotlin a lot. Um, so I told him like, hey, or told Junie, hey, this is what I have right now. It works, but make it nice. We see in the code review how nice it is, but it's definitely nicer than what I had.
Yeah. One trick there is before generating the code, ask Junie to generate the best possible guidelines. And it can
Mm-hmm.
be the requirement can be pretty vague, like well, since we have some understanding about programming in general, like maybe you don't have the knowledge about the language that you are currently working with, like in my case TypeScript, or in your case
Mm-hmm.
Kotlin, you can still express the requirement about the style, like prefer immutability to mutability, prefer functional style, and so on, and ask Junie to generate the guidelines for the language in a detailed but concise way, and you will see that it will actually generate some examples of the code as well.
Oh, that's a good idea. So one thing that it now did that I don't like, which makes sense, but it basically preserved the image in the markdown, which I think is cool. But like an LLM won't be able to work with the source. It would be nice for me if I want to look at it myself. Um, but I think for now I would just wanted to replace it with the base 64 of that image in that place.
And it
So
ignored our requirement about the comments again.
yes, you're right.
Maybe by the end of the stream we gonna figure it out, like how many times you have to say no in order for the LLM not to generate comments.
Okay. So let's refactor this. I mean, the other thing I could technically at the time. No, no, I want this. Do you think it will now generate code comments?
I don't know. I think it will ignore us like for good
No,
now.
probably.
Like we. Mm, I'm recording this and I'm trying to figure out like how much of the free space do I have, like so that it it's not much actually, but I'm gonna make some room.
I do have to say, I do like this two-column layout a lot, where you see the plan, see where it's still, where
Oh
it's
yeah.
at right now.
The team was promising the man in the middle for the plan, my man in the middle feature, so that you can actually confirm that you want this plan
That
to
would
be
be
executed.
that would be nice. And the other thing that I would really like if it edits here, crawler that it, or like crawler.test here, so that it jumps there and you see what's happening, kind of as like a stream where, yeah, I would like that.
Mhm.
Mm-mm-mm. Well, that doesn't sound right.
Still not exactly what you wanted, right?
Yes, I'm very snarky with my LLM. I either say thanks and please and sorry, or I'm very snarky if it goes off the rails. Did you read that article that OpenAI says that saying please and thanks burns millions of dollars for them?
No.
I would have, if that's really the case, it cannot be that difficult to just put in like a if statement, if text content, just please ignore this. Or here's a static text. I don't know. Seems somewhat ridiculous. I can see if I find this real quick.
One discussion point that I see in the community right now is that with tools like this, if they can generate code for you, is there like a point when we decide, okay, developers are not needed anymore? I think this discussion has been for too long now, and I think what I see again is that there is like now a consensus that no, it's not going to happen. That's the first thing. And I just recently saw an interview with CEO of GitHub saying the same, kind of the same thing, saying that kids should learn how to code. Um, this is like a nice indication that you know the business people are now turning back into this thinking that no, these things are great, but they are not going to replace the developers.
One thing that I think is going to change is like I think developers had quite a luxurious situation in the sense that there was like high demand. There was an industry that it's not necessarily easy to get into, and therefore the salaries were like comparatively very high. I think that's going to level out a little bit. I don't think someone at Facebook in 2-3 years is still going to make, like here in the US, like 400,000 or 500,000 a year, whereas like someone working in a mom and pop shop is making like 50,000 a year. I think that's going to be a little bit more leveled.
Okay. Yeah, Meta was one of those who were saying that like in half a year they don't need like 60% of developers, and but let's see.
Okay, so let's see what it. Oops. I should stop being snarky with AI because it already did what I wanted. I just didn't see it. Oops. So basically, what it does now is check if it's already a base 64, which is nice. I mean, most websites won't use a base 64 for image because it's not really optimal, but optimized. But if it's not a base 64, then it fetches the image, converts it to a blob, and converts it to a base 64. So that's pretty sweet. And that is even. I like this even more. That's even smarter than what I thought it should do, because it now sets the base 64 in the image. So it should still be valid markdown. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really smart. But I think I would like the alt to be preserved too, because it adds additional context for the LLM. So
Well, another thing that I just read recently, maybe a couple of weeks ago, about all this kind of new way of programming among developers and how it might change the landscape, is that let's say there is a separation between the senior developers and junior developers, right? How do senior developers react on all this? They either have very high expectations or have very low expectations, and usually they want to keep things under control because they know what they are doing. Like when they are writing code, they generally don't like auto completions even generated by AI because they are getting in the way. I know what I'm typing. I don't need all this, right? And then they try some of the agentic tools or maybe just the chat or whatever else, and they don't get a good result because garbage in, garbage out. You didn't specify a good prompt and you got a bad result, and then they are disappointed and they just discard the whole category of the tools like for good. Junior developers don't have this problem. They get a bad result, they try again. They try again, 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 and over time they develop the intuition how to use those tools to get a good result. The point here is that AI is not tired. It doesn't have a hangover after, yesterday evening, or it doesn't have a bad day. The weather is not affecting it in any way as well. So if junior developers learn those tools and learn the intuition how to talk to those tools to get a good result quicker, the average would be like much cheaper solution with a pretty nice quality. It should be, like in theory. In practice, maybe not. In practice, the research is showing that the quality of the code has been going down over the years. So there's definitely some room for improvement. But it means exactly that, folks. Like it's garbage in, garbage out. If you are not providing a good context, good guidance for the tool, then well, the code will not be that nice. It might have bugs and so on. And I think what we need in our IDEs is like better insights into the code, even better insights into the code, especially if you start generating them in dozens of the files. Like it's if you are generating a lot of code and you still want to keep everything under control, you start reading a lot and you just burn out because it's all code reviews and code reviews without typing. That's not nice.
Before I do the next prompt, I have another question. Would be curious to see what you think about that. I think Khalid, our former colleague, shared that a while ago. That he read an article that newer languages are going to have a disadvantage in the age of AI because there's not as much data to train on. And I mean, I think our AI assistant team had confirmed similar for Rust that they struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
I've heard that there are ways to overcome this, like some companies are working on synthetic data.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've seen something in the announcements by OpenAI when they were announcing some new model or whatever. Some of the engineers that presented there mentioned that they are working on synthetic data. That's an interesting concept. I'm not sure how does it look like.
Yeah, same.
But it would be interesting to learn what is the direction, because okay, we have consumed all the data for training, but now what's next? And apparently it's the synthetic data, but I have no idea how does it work. The other thing is that the other thing that I see is that the context window, right? The context window is usually like 200,000 tokens or something like that, and there are some models that are providing larger context window. But the problem there is that a lot of those models have not been trained on the data that is more than 200,000 tokens. So yes, you have a context window where you can put a lot of data in, but the output is probably going to be garbage. So we don't know.
One thing that I think that is getting more and more attention is the importance of docs. To have like high quality docs, that those can be ultimately the source for training LLMs. I think that is going to be like, whereas right now most of the docs are for like frameworks and stuff are just mediocre. Might be a JavaScript issue. I'm very much aware of that. But I think if you have quality docs that come with like different levels of expertise of like, okay, here is how you get started. Here are some sample applications. Here are recipes. Here are some scenarios, etc., etc. If you have like all those different angles and properly maintain that, that would be the source that is necessary to properly train LLMs. And this way also you can like enforce new coding standards, new language features, and those kind of things. I think whereas right now, because we need that huge amount of data for, and we use all GitHub or like open source projects and stuff to have this reference data. I think having high quality sample data from the people that design languages, design frameworks, implement them will be ideally or like the ultimate goal. And this way we can make sure we support new emerging technology.
Exactly. Well, there is a comment by Ido, like he's working on IntelliJ platform SDK and not getting a lot of help from these tools. And I can totally second that. I have a similar use case, Spring AI library. It's pretty new, and they are pre-1.0, so they're like milestone 7 or something like that. And if you try to generate some sample application with Junie or with any other agent like LLM or whatever else, it gives you the APIs that has been there like half a year ago but not present anymore, and the model just doesn't know anything about the new APIs. So that's one thing to figure out, like how to make the agents and everything else to work properly with this kind of tools. An obvious comment would come up here is that retrieval augmented generation should solve this, but it's a theory. It's not really like a quality solution today. Yes, for small things, ROG works, but if you have like a whole library or framework or even a platform, mm-mm. Okay, what's going on?
So yeah, sorry, I did some things on the side. So I basically told Junie, hey, I don't want for the webhook to specify the author or hand it manually. I want you to implement heuristics to fetch it from the website itself. And the approach I took, I thought was really, really smart, where it basically says, okay, let me look for meta text where you can specify an author. Because that's, for instance, what I do for my blog posts. And I thought that was incredibly smart. So I took this example of the blog post that I have for my next episode already, which was written by Ricky Hanlon, who's one of the React core team members. But the React docs don't maintain that. So I was like, well, that's nice, but that wouldn't work in this case already. You see here all the meta attributes, and none of them says author. So I was now looking what else it does, because this would go into the else block. So it would go for author selector. So if there's a class author, okay, that's an interesting approach. So it basically took a couple references. So class would not yield a result in this case. Things inline dark. Nope. But this is hard to figure out because there's no. That's from an accessibility point of view not very well done. It does have the author somewhere here in this server generated blob from Next.js, which I'm. I don't want to look through this, to be honest.
People are still asking about Junie for writer. Well, we have to repeat that. It's coming, but not so soon. Not immediately. You have to wait. You have to wait. Sorry for this.
I mean, the approach is already fairly solid, to be super honest. I could. Maybe I'll just write a test for this. Yeah, I think that's what I will do. So I'll copy this body, copy element. Do we have a main attribute somewhere?
Is there some sort of a search in?
Main. Okay, that's what I want.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And it's not vibe coding that we are doing right now, right? It's because we are looking into code.
That's true. That's true. It's also sometimes hurting my pride when I'm like, no, I think I'm right and you're wrong, and then I notice like, oh no, nope, I was wrong, you're right. That's like how I did that with the image. So okay, I have this example web page. Actually, I will put that in a Markdown document and reference that. Example.md. And I should not make it an MD because it's valid HTML. Okay, that's this example. Web page. The author of that post is, what was the name? Write a test and fix the implementation. I call it anyway. This video is going to go for the result. I do have to say, like, this is an approach that I didn't consider. This is what I would have done. Like, define a couple selectors that make sense. Looking for structured data, which is like the approach how you can basically define what Google shows and those kind of things, is another very smart approach that I wouldn't have to think about. So the approach that Junie took is much more elaborative than what I would have even thought about for this example. But because that is not a great example, or actually it's probably a very good example for what I'm trying to do, it wouldn't have worked. At least my assumption. I didn't run the test quite, but
People are asking about the quotas.
probably burned
It
through
would
so
be,
much already.
yeah, it's well, folks, this is something interesting we want to learn as well. Like, if you are running out of quotas, like, there is a trial, right? Like, okay, it's not a big trial, and obviously you will run out of that. If you're getting an upgrade and is still running out of that, we actually have monitoring that shows that it's not so many people that actually would run out. So if you are that person, I think the team would be eager to learn about your usage patterns, what you're actually doing. I can tell you, I'm generating, or my consumption is 4 or 5 times the above average developer, and I'm not even doing it every day, right? I'm not generating the code every day, but the team told me that my usage is like way above anything else. So if you are running out of the quotas, maybe you can ping me direct later, and we need to learn about your usage patterns, like, because when we did the early access program and the early bird, whatever, like, for a couple of years, yes, we dog fooded it internally, we gave it out to the users to provide the feedback and so on. Still, it's a very narrow test, I would say. Like, once Junie, or once the product is out to the public, so many different situations appear how people would use product and for which use cases, how they prompt it, how they approach. Like you never know. There is always a surprise how people do that. So it would be nice to learn from the users what are you doing exactly.
And one of the thing also that is worth mentioning here, that's partially the reason why we haven't publicly shared the quotas and limits yet, because we're still observing it based on real world usage and adjusting it where it makes sense. So if you run out of quota, I would approach Anton or our support team. Reach out to Anton. He's a nice guy.
You can talk to me, but I don't have like control over quotas, so you'll still have to go to support. Yeah.
No, I would reach out to the support, and there are a couple things that we could look in what makes sense. But I know for a fact that there's going to be a blog post announcement, some kind of transparency that we want to share around the quotas. So
we need to fine tune it somehow, like to make it more accessible, more approachable. So
yeah,
please don't be so too angry on us. Like we are trying to make it the best for you and easy and approachable and affordable as well.
So I'm not sure if you're. I thought where it started was really made total sense. Basically, define the regex where it was like, okay, check for by, check for author, check for written by. So like adding like another level of heuristics, which are really smart. And then it went utterly off the rails, where it's like, well, if the text includes the name of the author that I want, you're good. You're good. Hmm.
But it hasn't stopped yet. Maybe it will adjust and refine this.
Yeah. Otherwise, I would probably just delete that part and run the test and see if that works already, because I think the by part would already be sufficient here, the regex. Besides the fact that I would never be able to write a regex like that.
If you open this file like in a normal editor, would you be able to alt-enter on that regular expression? Check regexp, that's a nice feature that we have in the IDEs for all the languages, where we detect the regexp and then you can test it if it matches stuff like the green checkbox. Yeah, has been there for 15 years. We have this feature, and a lot of people don't know that it exists.
I didn't know that. So I usually always go to like regex 101 and copy that, and then the JavaScript syntax is not 1000% the same, so I always have to tweak it slightly. I'm like, that is so cool. Well, today I learned.
Yeah. And there is also explained with AI that just copies and does the same thing in the assistant, but checking the regexp is a nice tool. Like it's a nice tool.
That's pretty cool. I agree.
People were using plugin for that. Here you go. You learned something today.
But it's still generating comments. It even put out debug comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the regexps, by the way, if your regexps contain groups, like in braces, actually on the matching string you can detect which group is matching which sub element of the input. That's also a good feature of the same thing, of the same tool.
Okay. Have you ever stopped AI or Junie? Because it's not like.
Yeah. Yes. When I see
method 5 is already outrageously obnoxious, but method 6, where it's basically again checking for regex by name, which it already did here. So let's stop this. Let's clean this up a little bit because I don't want this.
So the approach we took with you right now is that we started with the ask mode, right? We asked Junie how to approach this, but we didn't do the two other steps that I usually do. I usually ask it to generate. Yeah, I usually ask I ask Junie to generate a plan. Hey, Junie, generate me a development plan for this feature or the project or whatever, and write it to a file. But it will be like a structured plan of what should be done to implement this project, but it will not contain the tasks, like what exactly to do yet. And the other prompt I'm often using is to generate a task list with the placeholders for the checkboxes so that it could untick the tasks as proceeding. Uh, and I feel like we're currently missing that, maybe. Because you see, like it's derailing from what you wanted to achieve. It first generates what you want, but it's probabilistic. So maybe if you ask it like, imagine you asked it to build Amazon website, a e-commerce web store. It will take the first step towards the direction from your initial state towards the goal. It will be like, let's say 95% correct, but the next step will be 75%, and the other one will be 50%. And instead of getting into the goal, building an e-commerce website, you get pet clinic application until in the end. So totally different what you expected.
I think we originally scheduled this for 1.5 hours, right? So I also don't want to like completely overshoot.
We can do. No, we
we
can
schedule
do
for 2 hours, easy. Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest? How do I get my author name now here? How do I get this method to work properly? Not this method, but
if you know how to do that, I would do that without AI. Like if you really know.
Well, so I think the implementation how it is right now should technically work. I would like the extracted author to. So I would like to see a test and see if that works the way because I think it should just work already. So if I it should, Ricky Henlon, I think was his name, based on the so it is spying on that. Where is it? Maybe look at the test a little bit more how it works, because I would assume that it. Okay. Page implementation. That's probably this method. Okay. Okay, so here it puts the HTML in there. I see. Well, I want it to use. That's Junie. Junie can figure this out. I trust Junie.
Okay.
Okay. So add. Let me start a new chat. Start new task. Add a test to call test.ts that uses the HTML from example.html and assert that the author author is Henman, I think. One day I'll remember the name. Rick Henman, yes. Because I think the implementation should already work for this example. I think. I just want to make sure it does.
If you run the implementation, would it produce any output?
Yeah, probably. I could probably. Yeah. Oh, let me. Well, I would try to save it in Google Drive right now. So that, and I don't have the API keys configured, so I would probably need to, instead of save it in Google Drive, implement a local method, or like in dev mode that implements it in the local file system. Well, that could work. That would be an alternative, yeah. But I'm not sure how much pair programming you have done with Paul or Boss basically. But he's a very big fan of test-driven development, so for my future races, I might do that.
Okay. I figured, like I was first convinced that with Junie you should be doing TDD, and it kind of worked for simple stuff. But when I started doing something that where like larger scope projects where I generate more code, I figured that the tests are holding me back, kinda. So I wanted to proceed faster. Junie is not very fast, and I decided, okay, if I'm doing like speed coding, kind of speed coding with Junie, then I'm not doing testing. I'm feeling adventurous.
I was never really a big fan of TDD, to be super honest. I always preferred getting the implementation out first and then write tests to make sure my implementation is correct. That workflow always worked better for me because 99% of the time when I tackle a problem, I already have a rough idea of how the implementation would look like. So that aspect of TDD where it's like, okay, you don't know how the implementation will look like and it helps you shape the API, it's kind of like, seems like a no op for me.
Can we put anything in .Junie besides MD files? As far as I know, the only file that Junie will automatically discover is guidelines.md, but you are not restricted from mentioning the other files in guidelines.md. So you can actually, in guidelines, you can write that all the other MD files in this folder are also considered as guidelines, and that would work. Or the way I use it, I would put all the requirements are in the docs folder, and then in the guidelines I would mention that, hey, like treat everything that is in the docs folder as a documentation or requirements to the project. That also works.
And also on that note, right now Junie doesn't work with images or anything. So it just works with text files. You could probably work around it by, as I did with like a base64 of that image. I would assume that works. I haven't tested it.
Yeah, like it's an interesting thing. Like, would the model analyze the base64 and give you some answer? I know that we had some tests, but it just didn't get into the current version, so it's gonna be implemented later, adding the images. I'm waiting for that feature as well. It would be nice, like, to upload the image and say, like, okay, I want this website using like this example from the screenshot. But if you are doing that already, for practical reasons, who is doing the screenshots today? Like it's the hobby, or like if you're testing something, in fact, you probably want Figma to be connected somehow, like, and say, okay, I have this design in Figma, please implement that for me. That would be more professional, I would say, and then Junie would have to support the MCP servers, and that's not implemented yet, but I hope it will. Yeah, exactly. MCPs use this use case.
Interesting. So the nice thing is it has fancy tests, but it didn't run them.
Interesting. Why is that? Because we didn't tell it to.
Yeah, technically not. That's true. Well,
we could go passive aggressive here. Why didn't you think of running your own tests? Yeah, Ido was clarifying if the only file that Junie is referring to automatically is the guidelines.md. Yes, the answer is yes.
I mainly use Junie in my Angular project, but does that use more code compared to using Junie in a Java project or Python project? Usually Angular projects have way more files, thus context. So first of all, about Angular, because I have opinions about Angular, you shouldn't use different files for one Angular component. I think that was a bad pattern that got established within the Angular community. Inline templates and inline style, not like in HTML inline style, but like having the file inlined in the Angular component is fine. Particular as we have stellar tooling that allows you to convert it into an external template or even refactor it into a separate component. So you should not do that in the first place. If you happen to do that because code convention within a repository, it will probably take up a little bit more context. I would assume.
I wouldn't think it would take drastically more. Like, what's the difference? Like, if you have more files, like, still it's only the file name basically that is an overhead.
I don't know what level of meta information of a file we share, but the Junie context might be true, but Junie would be a little slower because you basically would read all those files.
Exactly. Yeah. The more files you have, the more tool invocations would Junie have to do currently.
Is this
but probably it should not affect the context or like the token limits that much.
Yeah.
Although it's an interesting thing, like you can technically you can implement the same thing using React and Angular, so there should be some statistics. Like it's possible to calculate some statistics. Which framework demands more tokens to implement the same thing?
I'm 100% sure it will be Angular because Angular is a lot more verbose than any other framework.
Okay.
Which gives like a level of control that you don't have in the other frameworks. But so in Angular, for instance, allows you to have a different component name than the class name. In React, in React it's inferred by the function name. In Vue, it's inferred from the file name. So you have that additional level of control where you can configure every HTML selector that you want, but it also in every component you need to specify that. So yeah, I'm without a doubt I would bet money that Angular has some.
That would be an interesting test when we have a proper way to upload images. Do the same test for implementing the same UI, maybe not pixel perfect, but at least functionally. Right. And then if we have more transparent reporting, compare how much more money you actually have to throw into this engine to get a solution with either of the frameworks. Maybe then something like Svelte or I don't know, Vue would be more appropriate for working with Junie.
Okay, I need to mess with Puppeteer because I have never before, and my local configuration doesn't work.
There is a funny question. Like right now, would Junie use node modules in its context? You know, do you remember this meme, the heaviest objects in the universe,
That is
where
not
the
funny. It's a little funny.
that wouldn't fit.
Yeah. No, right now Junie does not use node modules, and that's a good thing.
To spend
Okay,
more tokens at a time, yeah.
so I don't want to really mess with Puppeteer right now because I don't think that would be fun to watch on the stream while I fix my setup. So we have a lot in place, which I like. I'm not super keen of like the example, real simple and test, but I think that's okay. I think this was very productive already for me on my tool. Once I have Puppeteer run and I can test it, this was pretty sweet. I like this.
Nice, nice.
Are
What
there
we
any?
could do,
Yes.
what we could do, when you finish this automation, you create a summary video for all the folks who've been on the stream, watching us and looking like waiting for a solution to happen. That wasn't the goal. It was a goal to hang out and see how Junie works and where it fails and where it doesn't, and learn a few things like regular expressions in our products. Yeah.
I was curious if we do the same kind of thing with cron job because I think in Spring we basically translate it into human readable text, right?
Yeah.
I think I've seen stuff like that.
Oh, wanna have fun more? Like it's not Junie, but we can still do some fun with the tools. Try I don't know, assigning a string to some variable, like maybe const whatever is there, and start writing some. You just open the string, like do an empty string, and we do language injection there.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh,
it's
that's a
already an
TSX file that, yeah, that.
it's already an HTML. Uh, it's fine. It's okay. Like we have language injection working. It's good. It's good.
Works
So
better
what
than
you
I
can
thought
do
it would.
now, yeah. So what you can do here now is Alt Enter, and there is edit HTML fragment, and it will open an extra editor, and then you can do something like just delete it all and type table.
Oh,
No, not like this. Just table, and then the angle brace, like, and then like how do you do this? TD or TR? It should be TR. Then times two. Let's say
oh,
TR times two. You should
like
do this
this?
star. No. The star.
Oh,
Yeah, like a math expression basically. Yeah, and then another angle brace and TD times three, for instance.
but I mean that's just Emmet, right? I
Yeah,
thought. Yeah.
some people don't know that, but it
Okay.
works inside the strings as well. For some reason, currently does not syntax highlight in the string, but if you hit tab, it should actually expand normally.
No.
Yeah, and it does. And if you don't do that inside uh, the editor, the extra editor, it actually you can do the same thing within the string, and it will expand the table for you as well. That's pretty cool. But you need to make sure that language is injected into the string.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so wrong keyboard short. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. I should pair program more often with you. I learn a lot.
Nice.
Sweet.
All right. Yeah.
Any
Thanks everybody for coming to this stream, and I hope you learned something. Like you had fun maybe with us. Have a great evening and have a great day